Good evening, everybody. Welcome to SPORE. Let's open our meeting with a moment of silence, followed by the Serenity Prayer. Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Thank you. Welcome to everybody who's joining us online tonight. If I let this mic drop, just give me the up. I have a tendency to let it fall. Paul always yelling at me. So our topic this evening is life's ups and downs. I've been thinking about that a lot over the last several days, and it's like, what does that really mean? So the only thing I really have in this world is my experience and some of what I've seen. I've been around for a little while. I've sponsored a number of guys, been to thousands of AA meetings, so some of it extends beyond my own personal experience. I've walked many guys through the steps and been witness to a lot of things outside of what I've been through personally. But how many people just dismiss it as, well, that's just one of life's ups and downs? I know I did. However, most of my stuff that I got involved with was downs, right? And that was just indicative of the kind of life that I led, right? Not much good things happened. The dope man having what I needed, or, I wasn't old enough to buy alcohol when I got sober, so I had to steal it. But if I knew if I had a plan, and it was looking like it was going to work out, that's what I considered an up in my life. But most everything was a down. And then I get to recovery and I hear this saying a lot, and they used to say it a lot. I don't even know where it came from, honestly. It may be in the book. I should have Googled it today. I don't know, but they talked about the highs aren't so high and the lows aren't so low. And my immediate thought was, well, I understand about the lows, right? Nobody wants to be low, but high, right? Man, that's my gig. Why wouldn't anybody just want to be high all the time? It took me a while to figure out and to realize in my life, with both aspects, the ups and the downs of life, I don't think either one of them are ever going to end. When I'm low, I think I'm never going to get back high. And when I'm up there and I'm on that high, I'm not talking about that high, I'm talking about like a recovery high, I don't think I'm ever going to come down. And when I do, I go right past the middle and go straight down, and I just plummet and I crash. And I'm devastated. And what that does to me, it puts me in victim mode. Right? And some guys have anger, they have a lot of different things. I can literally justify anything when I'm in victim mode. Anything that I want to do or not want to do, when I'm in victim mode, I can justify anything, whether it's good or bad. I'm trying not to make this another balanced talk, but it's hard not to, because it's like, what lies in the middle, right? What's in the middle of life's ups and downs? Life, God. When I see people, so I was having a really hard time putting words to this today, but, when you're around that person and they're just calm, right, and they're easy to be around, that's the guy I want to be. And that's the guy I am sometimes, because I'm not up here and I'm not down here. I've learned how to land in the middle. So that's what I was going to share with y'all a little bit tonight, of what that journey has looked like in my life, of learning how to land in the middle. One thing it's made me is I work really, really well under pressure, because y'all gave me, this guy named Bill Root died with 50-something years of sobriety, and he used to talk about day-tight compartments. right? He put everything in these little compartments, in his life, and that's where it stayed until it needed to come back out again. He wasn't victim to all the feelings and emotions and the outside influences that got on him. And Bill was one of those people. Bill Roop was his name, if I didn't say that. He's dead now. But Bill was one of those people that was just easy to be around, There's also another aspect to this that don't let anything that I say tonight, my first sponsor, not Paul, but my first sponsor also told me, son, we're never going to rise above human, right? So I'm always going to be, fall victim to the ups, the downs of life. But getting back to the middle, getting back to the neutrality. We had a meeting night before last, Monday night, at Howell Place, and that was the meeting. Was talking about that line in the 10th step talks about that position of neutrality, and that's where I like to be. That's where I like to live. That same sponsor also asked me one time. He said, son, when you're having that committee meeting in your head, and you're running all this stuff up there and all these scenarios and all this stuff's going on in your head, do you ever come up with anything good? And I'm like, I don't. I literally don't. The more I thought about it, I was like, I'm always the victim. It's always going to be bad. So what he told me was, he said, your little system is faulty. And he just left it at that. Your system is faulty. I think about those words today, still today. All these years later, I think about those words, that my system is faulty. So what I do is typically, there's another big one that helps me land in the middle, and that's pause. I've learned a lot of times, I used to say sometimes, a lot of times, the best thing I can do is nothing. Yesterday, these two guys were with me. Yesterday was a rough day at work. And I rarely think about walking off a job. I was looking for an excuse yesterday. I was looking for the customer to get at me a little sideways. I was hunting it, And so I literally practiced that yesterday. Of, what? Tomorrow's a new day. Let's just see what tomorrow brings. I was pretty down yesterday, if you could label one up or down. I was pretty down. Had a lot going on in my head. Some of y'all know some of the stuff I've got going on at home and with the kids and all those things. And it just kind of felt like it was all piling in on me, right? And so I had to practice that yesterday. Let's just do nothing, And I don't know if the customer changed overnight or if I got a better perspective, but today was a different day. The work wasn't any easier, right? But the customer was smiling, and you know what I'm saying? It just seemed different. And that's the beauty behind just pause. In the book, the big book talks about it anyway that I know of, and I know the Bible does because I hear it when Paul shares it and when Bob shares it in church on Sundays. But the book makes reference to that as well. Makes a lot of reference to pause. Our book calls it, I pause when agitated or doubtful. I've learned, you also told me, I don't make any big decisions when I'm hungry, when I'm angry, I'm lonely, I'm frustrated. Nothing ever good seems to come out of that. So once again, just pause. And my friend Bob Crawford, I remember where I was on 400. I had this big problem, and I was going to go home, and I was going to hammer it out that night. I was walking away. I was either going to be married or divorced, or whatever. And it was like tonight. And he said, Scott, simple as this. He said, Scott, if it's a good idea today, it'll still be a good idea tomorrow. And I call those filters. He gave me a filter, right? That I don't have to act, because I'm a make it happen. Let's get her done kind of guy, and that's my nature, and that's what we do. And RC and Chris the same way. We work together, and sometimes that's hard to just pause. So I'm coming to a point here of everything that I've been thinking about the last several days with life's ups and downs and how to land in the middle. Who's in the middle? It's God, right? It's God. And I actually wrote down, it's God. It's faith. It's confidence in the process. I believe in the process. that we do here. I believe in my church. I believe in the things that I'm just now kind of coming back to church, and it's been really great. And I love this when Paul does it. I love this. I love Spore. I'm here every Wednesday night. What would he be? My great granddaddy sponsor. When things have impacts on me, I remember exactly where I was. I could take you back there like it's yesterday. And I was sitting at Spalding and Holcomb Bridge, and I popped in a cassette tape of a guy named Bill Hollingsworth, and he was giving a talk on practicing the presence of God. And what he talks about in that tape, or in that talk, was bringing God into my daily moment-to-moment life. Don't leave him at home once I get up off my knees, right? After saying my prayers, don't leave him there. Bring him into your moment-to-moment life. And that's been huge. Because literally from that moment forward, I really set out doing that. I had that on my radar. And that's made a huge difference in my life. Because I practice that presence of God. I see God in so many things and in so many places. We work down in the city every day, and we like literally live in just got to be one of the most beautiful cities in the country. I've been to a few of the others, but not enough to say that from my own experience, from what the pictures I've seen. I mean, especially the springtime, the fall. I mean, our homes, the trees, all the things, right? So so again, if I've got God in there, right, that's what I see. When God ain't there, all I see is all those speed humps that I have to go over at about 2 miles an hour in my van. Some of y'all seen how big my van is, and I've got to go over them. And there's some Range Rover on my, trying to get in the back of the van with me because he can hit them at 40, right? I got to hit them at 3, and all I see is the road and you know what I'm saying? And I get this going on. I get that teeth gritting thing going on. So that's the difference when God's there and when Scott's there. You know what I mean? And that can change in an instant. It's a decision, right? And usually that decision starts with me sitting back in my seat. Because when I'm starting to feel that way, I'm up on the wheel. You know what I'm saying? I've got my back off the seat, and I'm up on the wheel, and I'm going, and I'm watching 6 cars ahead because I can see over everybody, and I'm watching him, what he's doing, and I just sit back, and I relax. So it's like, all right, so how do I bring God into my life every day, right? How do I land in the middle? Some of it just sheer practice. I come from a place, I'm such a literal black and white person. Where are my children? Did they leave? Okay. I come from just such an absolute literal black and white world that I thought, initially, I felt like that if I had any downs, that I was failing at my program, right? That I was missing a step in my life. I was missing a principle, and I had that sponsor. Again, back to that statement, son, we're never going to rise above human. So I mean, that's kind of where I come from. It's, landing in the middle. Beth Hartley, the lady that stories in the big book, was a friend of mine for a while, but I used to see her more often than I do now. But she talks about, she said, I used to think that when her book talked about being selfish and self-centered, that meant selfish and vain. But what it really means is if I can't win, I don't want to play. Right? I mean, and I remember that. If I set out to be my sponsor sponsored probably 20 guys, and I set out to be his favorite, or I was going to quit. You know what I'm saying? Oddly enough, I ended up kind of being his favorite, which is a different story, and I had gotten over it by then, but nonetheless. But that's where I was, right? I had always had that sense of impending doom that the book talks about. So again, not a very balanced. So, I mean, literally, my emotions are always way up here or they're way down here. And today, I remember back in 2008 when I lost everything. And I literally was sitting at my office, and RC knew my old partner, and we're sitting there looking at our board that used to be slammed full of work, and it literally was empty. It was a dry erase board, and it was empty. And I said, man, he said, what are we going to do? And I said, I don't know. He said, do you care? You kind of seem like you don't care, right? That we're like literally going broke. I mean, I ended up losing my house and 3 vehicles. Like, I managed to hang on to a workman, lost 2 boats. You know, I lost a lot. But because I had God in my life, and because I had faith, and because I had the 10-step inventory. Because one of my first thoughts was, what have I done to get us here? What have I done to put myself here? And I had done nothing wrong. So what's coming next, right? That's all I had. What's next? And I didn't have that panic, and I didn't have that fear. Now, you know, it wasn't the most convenient thing to lose your head. I got to know the repo man. Got to know him on a first name basis. And twice he told me, I said, he came to get one of my boats, and I said, man, I stole the Baron Buddy, the caps off of those hubs out there. I said, let me find you another set real quick. I said, those things are going to fail on you about 10 miles down the road. And he's like, I've never had anybody help me repo their vehicle before, right? And another time I said, let me pump the tires up on that car. It's going to go flat on you. One of the cars that he was taking, and you know, and he said it again. It was the same guy. He's like, this is so bizarre. Most people are cussing me, or you know what I mean. It's like, you're actually helping me repo your stuff. I'm like, because it had nothing to do with me, right? And my friend Earl Hightower from out in California, he said, you know, he said they don't. He said his sponsor was telling him, but he said it to me. He's like, Scott, they don't want your money. They want their money. That's their vehicle, right? They loaned it to you with the idea that you were going to give them some money over a period of time, and when that stopped, they took their vehicle back, right? And so it's those kinds of things that I've learned and I've picked up in recovery, just these little slogans, right? These little bumper sticker AA deals that have helped me to deal with all of life's ups and downs. I made a note about, I was thinking about it. I was like, you know, I'm sure everybody in this room, and I know a half a dozen of them, I know everybody in this room knows somebody that's like this, right? They're either really high or they're really low. They're never in the middle. And I'm amazed at how many people these days are being labeled bipolar. And I wonder, is it not, with some of them at least, just a lack of God? You know what I mean? Because, I mean, you could have looked at me for a large portion of my life well into sobriety and said, oh, this kid needs to be on meds, right? When I really needed God. I really needed meetings. I really needed to just sit here and stay sober long enough to get sober. Because this stuff, I mean, my sobriety has been, the book calls it the educational variety. I have had no upheavals. I've had no white light experiences. I've had no voices in my ears. I've had none of that. Now, I've had 1,000 examples of God showing up in my life where it's undeniable that God showed up in my life, right? But I've not had any of that, you know, and that's okay. I was thinking the other day, I think I showed it to him. I was having a tough time on this job, and I had said a prayer, just back and forth. He and I are in and out of a house 1,000 times before we're actually done with the job. And I remember just coming back in the house. I was like, you know, I really need to feel you, and I'm having a hard time connecting, you know. And I don't know why this stuff makes me cry. And I walked back in to the bathroom, and I looked down in the shower pan where I was working, and I guess I had taken off one of my gloves and just thrown it down. And my glove was literally perfectly laying there, like you couldn't have put it like this any better. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's okay, man. It's okay. And I was like, oh my God, okay, I get it. Then I just went on about my day, right? So he shows up, you know, he'll because I seek him, he shows up. One of the challenges with that I've seen in my own experience, but I've seen it a lot, is those highs, they can be really tricky for alcoholics. Because when I'm on that high, and I'm talking about life's good, money in the bank, everything's paid, whatever that looks like in your world. I know what it looks like in mine, right? That's the time I want to leave the principles. And that's the time I don't want to forget about them. I don't really go back into a dark place, but AA seems to get further and further away. And God seems to get further and further away the busier that I get. And I've seen as many, this is my opinion, I've seen as many people get drunk when times were good as I have when the chaos and insanity builds up in your life, because that's the flip side for me. I know what kills the pain. And it's my job to keep that insanity and that chaos at bay, because I don't think I'll ever drink again because I think it's a good idea or because I can drink successfully. But I will put chemicals in my body if that insanity in my life builds up to the point. I know what kills the pain, right? So let's stay out of that, right? Let's stay over here, on this side. But it's landing in the middle. Doing. I'm not sponsoring anybody right now. I've got a lot going on, and I feel so guilty, when they say at the meetings, anybody here want to be, willing to be a sponsor or whatever, and I just feel so guilty when I don't raise my hand. But Paul has said, for right now, we're going to focus on you. You need to be with you. You ain't got a lot to give right now. I got a lot on my plate, and I'm going through a lot, doing a lot of inventory work with Paul, because there were areas where I had some huge ups and downs in my life that I would have told you weren't there. I had no idea that I was living that way. But the book also tells me that my alcoholic life becomes the only normal one. That far supersedes drinking, right? Because my sober life can become the only normal one, and sometimes that's a really good thing, right? And sometimes there can be insanity, there can be self-centeredness, there can be all kinds of things that I have recently found in my world that have been pointed out to me by a sponsor as I've done this inventory work that I had no idea was there. So I still had, it's not all, the ups and downs in my life are not always obvious to me. So I'm a huge proponent of sponsorship. I'm a huge proponent of, every man in this room, no women, okay, every man in this room has a better perspective on my life than I do, because you're not emotionally attached to my stuff, right? Subsequently, any one of y'all respectively, so when y'all speak up or point stuff out, I best be listening, right? Because you may just say something that may not save my life someday. It used to be that way, but you may say something like my friend Bob Crawford that shared that with me. If it's a good idea today, it'll be a good idea tomorrow. That statement alone has helped me pause through more situations than I can tell you, and my brain just goes wild thinking, if I hadn't have had that filter in place when this scenario came up, if I hadn't have reacted the way that I did, I might have missed out on X, Y, Z, right? And I was thinking about one of those the other day. There was a guy, he kind of went off the deep end, but he was a guy that I kept. There was a contractor that we had, and he would call us every day from the bar. He had to be one of us and fire us, right? It's every day from like 5:30. He's drunk as he could be, and he'd call us and fire us. You sons of and all this and that, and he just cuss us out. I put him on speaker and just go about my day. But something told me, hang on to this guy, right? I don't know why. Maybe if nothing else, I'd be an example that this deal works. And we talked a little bit about recovery, and he wanted no part of it. But he introduced me to a guy that for a long time was a good friend of mine. And I ended up doing, good gracious, between me and some of the other people that did some work with him, we ended up doing a couple of $1 million worth of business with him. And I made a good friend, and I met some pretty cool people. Ended up doing a bunch of work for Steve Harvey, of all people, right? And ended up taking him fishing, right, on the river, on the Chattahoochee, when he bought this house that we had tiled. But left to my own devices, screw you, you got to go. Next, right? But I listened to that little God feeling inside, and it led me, it led me down a path that was a better path. Which brings me to another thought that I had of, been sober for a long time. I've been sober since I was 17 years old. I still am not qualified to decide between what's good and bad in my life. I have an inkling, right? I have an idea, and I'm going to have to say that having an idea of what's good or bad for me in my world it has to stop there, because I genuinely do not know. Again, back to when we started tonight, left to my own devices, everything's bad, right? So I have no idea what's good for me. And a lot of that I've heard Paul and Bob have elaborated on that from a biblical standpoint of how God and Scripture backs all of that up. I love listening to you guys. I love the way you guys preach. You tell a story, and I can't follow too much, but I can follow a story. And I really love the way you guys do that. And I love our church. I love Vision of Hope for that reason, because I can follow along and I can hear all these things backed up that I've only ever really read the big book in the 12 and 12 and AA literature. So this has been SPORE and having Paul as my sponsor and having Bob as my friend, and has been really, really cool to see the other side, of kind of the real side of where all this stuff originated from. So thank you for doing what y'all do. I really love coming to our church. Had a sponsor, the same sponsor told me, I'm going to give them names. How about that? I'm going to quit saying that. Bill, my first sponsor, I had him for 36 years. And Paul's been my sponsor for the last couple of years. He's got to live one day at a time, right? I said, okay. Well, again, I'm an extremist. Fast forward, he came to me one day and said, Scott, there's a difference in living one day at a time and living as if there's no tomorrow. It's okay to plan. It's okay to kind of look in that direction, right? Because I had gotten so comfortable with right here, right now. Man, if the world ended, okay, fine, whatever. Man, I'm good. I'm ready to go. So again, a little balance there. What do they say? I plan the action, not the outcome. Plan the action, not the outcome. That brings me a lot of peace, because when you combine that statement with faith, right, everything just seems to work out. Because what happens is, and we're in remodeling, we do remodeling, and what happens is, I could, the text message, the next text message I get could change my schedule for the next month or 2 weeks, and that happens fairly regularly, right? So when that comes, I make a plan. Well, the next text message may change it again, or it may change it right back. Well, we go down that road too. So those two put together with the faith in God, the fact that, what boots do I have on? Not work boots. I put my work boots on, and I'm usually in work clothes when I'm here. I put my work boots on, and I go to work every day. That's 80% of my battle. There's a lot of faith. There's a lot of confidence in that. I'm willing to go. 99.9% of the time, I make it. Every now and then, you get called back, sick children, that kind of thing. But I show up. I head to the city every day. That's 80%. I'm in the game, right? I'm in the game. As long as I'm willing to show up, as long as I'm willing to do what I know I can do, I'm in the game. God's got to rest. He used to say to me, it took me forever to figure out the complete ramifications and all of the spiritual significance behind, Scott, God's not going to shove a hot dog through the keyhole. And he's like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Well, I get it, and I see it, right? If I want something, I better get out there and get it. And he even had to run me out of meetings because I was unemployed for a little while, and man, I was at the 8111 Club, for the morning and the noon, and I think they had a 1 o'clock or a 1:30 or something like that. I was in like 4 or 5 meetings a day over there, and he's like, son, you think you might spend that 3 or 4 hours a day out hunting a job? You know what I mean? So, it's like I could, again, I'm a man of extremes, for sure. So, let's see. Give me 1 second. I heard a young lady in a meeting one night, and it's kind of a trending saying, but it's also to help me to so when I'm down, right, when things happen, and things are going to happen, right, and both of our books, and Jesus himself has said it in a number of scriptures that I've heard Bob and that I've seen on the screen back there, and I've heard Bob and Paul elaborate to. It's not that we're aiming towards this perfect life, to where nothing is going to happen. I'm never going to feel uneasy. I'm never going to feel doubtful. I'm never going to go against. It's not that. And somebody actually pointed that out in a meeting that I was in late last week, that there's a line in the big books. I remember what it is. He said, when these crop up, we ask it once for God to remove them. Talking about selfishness and self-centeredness. And he made a note of that to say that, it says when for a reason, right? So Jesus never promises us, the books never promise us, life never promised me that things aren't going to get sideways in my world sometimes, whether I've got a part of it or not. Things just happen, right? I was thinking the other day, I was like, I remember the first time my car stereo got stolen. And that's how I used to supply myself. I was a good car stereo thief. I could get in and out in a hurry. And I had built up a heck of a system in a little Honda Accord. And I went out to go to work, and I walked out, and the back glass was shattered. And I was like, what? What is this? Somebody threw a rock at my window, and I took a peek inside, and all those empty spaces where there used to be speakers and equalizers and head units and subwoofers. And I was like, wow, this really sucks. So it's hard to even get upset over that one, but sometimes, right, it just happens, right? I got no part in it, and that's just, it just is what it is. It's, it just has to be okay. I feel like I could just, I could talk, just keep just on and on about, ultimately all this stuff in my life. And Chris hears me say it 10 times a day, not 1,000, 10 times a day about balance, right? About landing in the middle. And what landing in the middle is for me, and it's what I always wanted. It's what I was missing as a child and didn't know I had it until AA gave it to me. And that was being comfortable in my own skin, right? Because I've spent my entire life trying to shape how you see me so that I can be okay. Shape the situations around me so that I can be comfortable in my own skin. And sometimes that's me trying to get something. Most of the time that was me trying to get something from you. And then in other cases, if I'm trying to impress you, it was a matter of what can I say or do. I went to a really large high school. I went to Dunwoody High School, and there was probably 2,000 something kids in there. And I think I've made it all the way to the 11th grade. So probably in 10th and 11th grade, when I walked down the hall, I said hey to everybody. I knew everybody in school. And when I went to jock parties, I took off the shirt, put on, it was Izod back then, and date myself a little bit. I put on that Izod, you know what I mean, and I went to the jock party. And we were called burnouts back then. When I went to one of my people's parties, you know what I mean? I dressed appropriately for that. I could go to any situation and be in any scenario and just mold myself right into the deal, right? I have never known what I want. I have never felt and fit into my own skin. And I think that's what, I'm going to go out on a limb here a little bit and say, I think that's what a lot of us are looking for. Alcohol and drugs gave that to me for a while. It really did. It helped me to fit and to be okay with right here, right now. And then inevitably, like our book talks about, like the big book talks about, that turned on me. I think it says something about it turned on me like a boomerang and all but cut me to shreds. You know, and that was my reprieve was only about three and a half years. I didn't drink very long. Started when I was about 13, quit when I was about 17. Didn't have much of a drinking career, but it worked. Then it didn't, and then I did it again, and I did it anyway, because by that time, I don't think I drew a sober breath for a couple of years. I really don't recall a time when I was sober. I didn't have some kind of chemical, you know, in my body. And it worked. You know, it allowed me to maintain and to land in the middle. And until it didn't. And it brought me right back to, I'm just going to call it what it is. The more I think about it, I was suicidal at 13. I thought God had made a mistake. I'd heard it in church that God don't make no junk and God don't make mistakes. I even saw bumper stickers that said it. And I thought, yeah, well, he made one right here. You know, I just fell through the cracks. And surprisingly, at 12, 13 years old, I was okay with that. And alcohol gave me that reprieve. It allowed me to be okay in this world, you know. And then I wasn't probably halfway in a year and a half. It brought me right back to that place to where I was at that jumping off point. I couldn't imagine my life with alcohol or without it. You know, I wasn't getting that reprieve anymore. I wasn't getting that sense of ease and comfort that I used to get. You know, I did it for a maintenance. And I was thinking about this the other day. I recalled this. I remember being in a panic, in that panic, right? I hadn't put anything in my system in a little while, and when I say a little while, I mean a few hours. And I remember I'd called up the dope man, and he said, yeah, I got it, man, come on over. And what it made me realize is I don't even have to ingest alcohol or drugs into my system to get that sense of ease and comfort. Man, I settled right out. I sat back in the seat. I was like, all right, you know, because this was a sure thing. I knew this guy, right? You know, me and him, we were tight, and it was like it was going to happen, and it was about 20 minutes away, right? And so that sense of ease and comfort doesn't even necessarily, in my experience, doesn't even require me putting it in. It's just knowing that it's there, you know. And so sobriety, if sobriety's given me anything, and the biggest gift that I've gotten out of sobriety, I have thousands of gifts, my three children being the biggest three, but I'm of no use to them if I'm not comfortable with right here, right now. The only way I've ever known to do that is, what page is that? I wrote it down. Page 85 in the big book, where it talks about being in fit spiritual condition. And I'm going to paraphrase. It says, I can live a life beyond my wildest dreams. I can exercise my willpower all I want along these lines, as long as I make it line up with God's. As long as I keep in fit spiritual condition, I'm good. Right? Page 86, 87, and 88 are three of the greatest pages that I've ever read about, heard about, seen, as far as what the surefire formula for a happy and a healthy life, right? It's all in there. There's accountability. There's God permeates. So I had one sponsor, he called me and said, I can't find the prayers on those pages. I'm like, oh my God. You know, there's a half dozen small little tiny prayers, you know, in those pages. But that's where it is, right? So that little formula that's on those 3 pages Maybe time to read that again. I used to give that to my sponsees. My sponsor used to give it to me of time to read 86, 87, and 88 for 30 days, again. So what y'all gave me is the balance. I'll end with that. Y'all gave me the balance that I always needed. Never, I'm going to say I was 15 years sober before I even realized that I didn't have it. I didn't know when the book talks about that we'll comprehend the word serenity. I always wondered why they put that word in there, comprehend. Not will know again or will experience. We will. That's a word, right? I mean, comprehend. That's a distinct word. Why? Why there? And I got a feeling a lot of y'all might be just like me. Because when I had that experience, when I truly comprehended what the word serenity meant, I don't think I took a deep breath till I was about 10 years sober. I really don't. Just I figured out I used to have headaches, and I used to eat about 4 or 5 Goodies headache powders a day. And I was at a therapist's office one time, and she said, "Do you realize how much you hold your breath?" I said, "What are you talking about, Carol?" She says, "You hold your breath more than you breathe, Scott." And I had not taken a deep breath. I was waiting in anticipation of that next shoe to drop my entire life, like ready to fight, right? And so when I tell you I didn't take a deep breath till sobriety, I mean, that's legit, right? Like for real. Hell, I wasn't getting enough blood to my freaking brain, right? No wonder I'm taking all these Goodies headache powders to get through my day. So anyway, thank you all for listening to me. I hope y'all got something out of that. I know I did. I wish I could, wish I was better at this. I hold myself to the standard of these two guys, Paul and Bob, and I feel like I fall short, but I'm hoping y'all got something out of that, and thank you for allowing me to share a little bit with y'all tonight. Now, I don't even have something fancy to say like Paul does, so we're just going to close with the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, and deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.